I don't even know what is up with that. The Maid of Honor is a screenplay I wrote and never did anything with, but apparently I thought it was worthwhile enough to write on the front of this book here. Hi, welcome to Kick-Ass Switch, putting the K in magic. I'm Joanna DeVoe, and you are watching a video about this story by Robert McKee. A big fat book, one of my favorite books I've written in it. 2 pieces, like wall to wall, every bit of white space. This is the book that taught me how to be a kick-ass writer. If you are not a writer, though, please do watch this video, because I'm not going to talk about how to be a kick-ass writer. I'm going to talk about how this book can apply to any art form, to understanding the human condition, and to living a life that is exciting and interesting to you. So I haven't done a book nerd post in a long time, and I rarely, if ever, I can't remember. I don't know if I've ever done a video to go with a book nerd post. What I typically do is share some pictures, a brief synopsis of my feelings about the book, and then 15 or so of my favorite quotes from the book that I think will give you like a gist of what it's all about. I'm a big old book pusher. I love books, and I love, if I really am excited about a book, I'll be like, you have to read this. So that is what my book nerd posts are all about. You have to read this, and then you have to read this, and then you have to read this. So maybe it's a good thing that it's been a while since I've done one. Give you some time to catch up with me. But this one gets a video because it's very, very special. I bought this new. I just want you to see how like beat up and crazy it is. This is the book you might have heard me talk about: 3-act structure, the fool's journey, the hero's journey. If you're interested in learning more about that, this is the book that will help you do that. And he outlines a 3-act structure in this book for storytelling, but I break it down into 5 acts, making the second act, I split that up into a 3-act structure. So you have Act 1, Act 2, 2, 2, and Act 3. So it ends up being 5 acts, and that's because stories often sag in the middle. So you have a super exciting beginning and a super exciting ending, but hardly anyone ever gets to the ending because the middle is so saggy and drags on, which is a problem with a lot of books. And since anybody can publish a book these days, I'm getting more and more wary of 5-star reviews on Amazon, people's friends, and maybe if they're like a popular YouTuber or something, their fans will come on and give a book 5 stars, and it's not until it makes it into like the general public that you start to get like a wider picture of the quality of the writing, because anybody can write a book these days, and most people I have found in my experience think that they can. And you can. The question is it a quality book? Is it a book worth a book nerd's time? And there are definitely people who have no training, who just have stories in them that they're burning to tell, and they sit down and the story comes out whole cloth and is very, very good. So this is not about dissing those writers, because I recognize that they exist. This book is actually controversial because those writers, people who like to write like that, hate this book. They hate it. And as you can probably see, I kind of love that they hate it, because this is a book that is going to challenge you if you are a writer. This is a book that is not going to let you get away with being like, well, I was just inspired, or I just had this story to tell. It's very challenging. There's a lot of like complex theory to understand, and it's all applicable. And when you apply it, magic happens. So one of the things that I want to talk about in this book that would apply to your life if you're not a writer is something called the gap. And the gap happens when your main character is going along and something unexpected happens. They take a particular action and they don't get the reaction back that they expect, and like a gap opens up and it's like, whoa, what just happened here? And then that's when things get exciting. That's when things get interesting. And you can do that for yourself in your own life by opening up a gap intentionally and keeping yourself on your toes and keeping your life interesting. So going to places you've never been before, speaking to people that you find challenging, trying out something that you know you suck at or you've never done before, and then kind of suffering through the beginning stages of not really understanding it. And that's really about stretching yourself in a way that builds character. And this book is so much about character development. And one of just the main principles, in my opinion, of writing a good book is show, don't tell. And this book can teach you how to do that. So I'm not going to read the book if you want to know. But in general, you know, a bad writer, or let's not say there are no bad writers. All writers are lovely. I respect anybody who makes that kind of effort. Anybody, whether they have training or not. That is not an easy thing to do. But for me, a quality writer understands this principle of show, don't tell. Whereas someone who does not understand this principle might have a chapter or two with their characters just sitting around and talking about their feelings and telling, you know, each other things instead of being in action and demonstrating whatever it is that the writer is trying to say. So this book can give you a bunch of little tips and tricks for doing that. And again, I want to reiterate that in your own life. Don't be all talk and no walk. It's in the walk that character is developed and that your story really starts to get exciting for you. Your story should be exciting for you regardless of what anybody else thinks. It's kind of a side effect that if your story is really engaging and you're excited and you're turned on by your own life, other people gravitate toward that. It's very magnetic. People, when they can see that you're like on fire about something and you're excited about it, especially if it's just your own life, people want to hook up with that kind of energy. It's very appealing. So, but at the very least, it's just about your story and your experience of it. And each life is its own story, and your life, you get to be the writer, the director, the lead actor. You get to decide the whole thing. And I think magic is a really personal thing. So for me, studying method acting really informed how I do magic. It taught me about sense memory, which is extraordinarily powerful, and it taught me how to tap into my emotions, to raise energy, to act as if, things like that. What writing has done for me with this book, there's two things. There's this book and there's a website called Word Player that has a series of articles that I actually reference in the beginning of this book here. There is a article about impressive failure that I recommend writers read all the time, and I've actually done a radio show on impressive failure. But what this book has done for me is just taught me about character development and the hero's journey. And it's just made me look at my life in that way of like the author of my own life, and how do you keep things interesting? How do you live a life that's worthwhile? You know, people ask those big questions of themselves sometimes, especially when they're having like an existential crisis, like, why am I here? My life has no meaning. My life has no purpose. When you start thinking about opening the gap, like I was talking about, or actively engaging an inciting incident that launches you on your own fool's journey, your own hero's journey, things like that. Working with the tarot, obviously, so many witchy people love to do that. But that's a creative way of being a witch, in my opinion. When art and magic, when they touch, they love each other. They're like lovers that were meant to be. So that's why I wanted to make a little video about this particular book. Before I turn this into just a huge ramble fest, which I didn't mean to do, I just wanted to say, like, check out this book, even if you're not a writer, if you want to approach your life in a unique way and just learn something new, But before I go, I just wanted to read two little, I've got whoop, paper falling out. This book is so lovingly abused. I just love it. I want to read two things that kind of demonstrate what I'm saying here about character, you developing. I'm talking about you as a character. He's talking about characters in a story, but you're the lead character in your own story. So keep that in mind. I'm going to read you a couple of quotes and then I'm going to let you go so this doesn't become too self-indulgent. But he says, Robert McKee, who wrote this book, true character is revealed in the choices a human being makes under pressure. The greater the pressure, the deeper the revelation. The truer the choice to the character's essential nature. So that's how you learn what you're made of. If you want to know what you're really made of, challenge yourself. Don't live in your comfort zone. Constantly step outside the comfort zone. Open that gap and then see what you're made of. See what kind of choices you make when things start to get really, really intense. Do you shut down? Do you get really irritable and aggressive? Do you get weepy and kind of like helpless? Or do you start to feel overwhelmed? Because that's an awesome opportunity not only to develop character, but to learn about yourself and to maybe even do some shadow work to say like, okay, why do I shut down every time the getting starts to get good and I get, you know, things start to get really intense? Why don't I step up to the challenge? What is this? What is happening here in my character? And it gives you the opportunity to do a bit of deep soul diving and to develop your character. And then the next little blurb is actually like that far apart in the telling, but I just want to extract a couple of sentences to make a point about once you open that gap, that journey that it takes you on, the inciting incident, the hero's journey. Obviously, it's going to be challenging or it's not worthwhile. And he says, we experience an emotion when the telling of a story, takes us through a transition of values. So it actually changes your values. You start to maybe identify what it is you value. So you might realize, oh my God, I value comfort over success. And you might decide you don't like that you want to be successful, but that noticing that, you know, challenging yourself and then the way that you shut down, for example, every time things start to get a little rough, you start to notice, oh my gosh, I value comfort over the success I've dreamt of. It gives you the opportunity to have a change in values. And then the other thing he says is meaning produces emotion. So for me, that's when you have one of those great aha moments and you're like, oh my gosh, everything clicks into place. You start to understand your purpose in the world. You start to understand why you do the things you do and how that actually reveals what your values are. And then it reveals the values that you actually want to have. And it might be interesting to notice how they don't always line up. So I'm really interested in character development. You might call it personal development. That might be what I'm talking about here in disguise as the word magic all the time. If people come, you know, people write to me and they're like, can you please help me do a spell for XYZ? And I just have to say, I'm not that kind of witch. You should go look up Katz Rodriguez is usually who I end up recommending to people like that. I'm the kind of witch that wants to encourage you to do the shadow work, to do the personal development, to learn how to push your own buttons, to recognize certain triggers so that you can create transformation. Magic is transformation, in my opinion. Magic is conscious transformation in alignment with your will. And that can mean, maybe if you're thinking of like dark magic, that could mean your ego's will, or if you're thinking about light magic, that could mean your soul's will. However you want to define that for yourself, it's all magic to me. And that is why I think that understanding story structure can be just a fun, experimental, creative way to approach magic. Is it necessary? No, it's not. Is it fascinating? Hell yes, and that is why I love it. So I hope you will follow the link down below. Check out that blog post. There is no affiliation going on here whatsoever. These are not affiliate links. This is purely just for the love and joy of books and storytelling and magic and life. Until we meet again, much love, peace,